The moment my sister tossed that gift bag across the table toward my son, I already knew something was wrong. The paper was crumpled. The handles were stretched out, the kind of bag that had been used before and repurposed without much thought. Jasper reached in, 9 years old and still genuinely excited about these things. Still at the age where a gift from family actually means something, and what he pulled out was a used paperback. Spine creased, pages going yellow at the edges, and someone else's name written in blue ballpoint pen on the inside cover. Underneath it, half a box of drugstore candy, the kind that comes in value packs at checkout. His cousins, my sister's 3 kids, were already tearing into things across the table. New AirPods still in the sealed box, a Nintendo Switch game, a pair of Nike high tops in exactly the right size. My sister had clearly put thought into those. Time, effort, real money. She hadn't put any of that into my son. She smiled at me from across the picnic table. Not a warm smile, the kind that knows exactly what it just did. We figured Jasper's more of a reader, right? That book is barely touched. Then my mother laughed. She actually laughed and said, "Besides, it's just the 2 of them. It's not like there's a lot going on over there. Just the 2 of them," meaning me and Jasper, meaning that because I was raising him without a partner, we were somehow less of a family, less deserving, less worth the same consideration she'd extended to her own 3 grandchildren without blinking. I had been divorced for 2 years at that point. I was 32, working full-time as a project coordinator, raising a 9-year-old in a 2-bedroom apartment outside Columbus, and I had spent a significant portion of those 2 years quietly helping my sister's family stay afloat. Not because anyone asked, because I thought that was what family did. I want to explain this part clearly, because it matters to what came later. For 14 months, I had been covering the after-school enrichment center fees for her 2 oldest, $180 a month, every month, on time. When things got tight for them last winter, I covered 2 months of their HOA dues so they wouldn't get hit with late fees, layered on top of everything else. I bought my youngest niece a winter coat and snow boots in October, because my sister mentioned almost in passing that she hadn't gotten to it yet. I didn't make a thing of it. I didn't bring it up at holidays or expect credit. I just helped, because I thought that was what you did for people you loved. 8 months before that Memorial Day cookout, my sister's car needed a repair she couldn't cover before her next paycheck. I added her as an authorized user on one of my credit cards. I looked right at her when I told her, "This is for emergencies, car trouble, a medical bill, something urgent." "Nothing else," she said. Of course, I would never. Back at the table, Jasper hadn't moved. He was holding the book with both hands, reading the stranger's name written on the inside cover. I watched him turn to the first page and then close it carefully, and I saw the exact moment he decided to be fine with it. He set the book down next to the half-empty candy box and folded his hands in his lap and said nothing. He was 9 years old and he was already that practiced at swallowing disappointment in front of our family. Something in me went completely, utterly quiet. I stood up. I told Jasper to come with me, took his hand and walked out to the driveway. My trunk was packed from that morning. I had spent 6 weeks choosing what was in those bags. Her oldest had mentioned wanting a graphic novel series. I found all 6 books plus a new journal because his old one was almost full. Her middle kid had been into art lately. I got her a watercolor set and a how-to-draw book. My youngest niece had pointed to a specific stuffed animal on some website, and her mom had said it was too expensive. I found it and bought it. For my sister, a Le Creuset Dutch oven in the color she'd once pointed to on a cooking show and said she'd never be able to justify buying herself. For my brother-in-law, a set of leather work gloves and a multi-tool he'd mentioned needing. For my mother, a monogrammed linen set in the weight she always said she'd buy when she had the money. Every choice had been deliberate, every single one. I stood at the open trunk and looked at all of it. Then I picked up both tote bags and carried them back inside. I set them down in the middle of the table, right next to the half-eaten chips and sweating lemonade glasses and my nephew's still sealed AirPods. And I started removing the gifts one by one and placing them back into the bags, the graphic novels, the watercolor set, the stuffed animal, the Dutch oven, all of it methodically, while everyone went completely still. My brother-in-law spoke first. "What are you doing?" "Taking them home," I said. I didn't look up. My sister pushed back from the table. "Those are for us. You already brought them." "I bought them," I said. "That's different." My mother stood halfway, hands flat on the table. "This is embarrassing. The children are right here." "I know," I said. "One of them just opened a used book with a stranger's name in it while the others got sealed boxes. I noticed." My sister's voice sharpened. "We were on a budget. It's not a competition." I zipped the first bag closed and started on the second. "You weren't on a budget when you bought the AirPods, or the Switch game, or the Nikes." I glanced at her. "Those aren't budget items." She opened her mouth, closed it again. "You had enough to celebrate your kids," I said. "You just chose not to extend the same to mine." My mother tried once more, softer. "Jasper didn't even seem upset. He's a resilient little boy. He'll be fine by tomorrow." I looked at her steadily. "You're right that he's resilient. He's spent years learning how to be fine when this family treats him like an afterthought. That is not something to be proud of." She sat back down. My sister crossed her arms. "So you're punishing my children because your feelings are hurt." I slung both bags over my shoulder. "Your kids got what you gave them. My son got what you gave him. I'm taking back what I gave you." I looked at her once more. "From now on, what you get from me is nothing." If you've ever watched your child teach themselves quietly not to expect much from the people who are supposed to love them most, you know exactly how that felt. Hit the like button, subscribe, and stay with me. What I found when I got home changed everything. The drive back was quiet. Jasper sat in the back seat with his seatbelt buckled and the used book open in his lap. I checked the rearview mirror every few minutes. He was actually reading it. "You okay, bud?" I asked. He looked up and considered the question seriously, the way he always did. "The book is actually pretty good," he said. "Whoever Sarah is, she has good taste." That made me laugh. A small, tired laugh, but a real one. "We'll get you something this week," I said. "Something you pick out yourself." He shrugged in that easy way he had, the one that was simultaneously heartbreaking and quietly dignified. "It's okay, Mom. Can we get pizza?" "Yeah," I said. "We can absolutely get pizza." We got home. I ordered the pizza. Jasper settled on the couch with the book while we waited. I sat at the kitchen counter and opened my phone. I pulled up the credit card app, the one I'd added my sister to 8 months ago for emergencies only. The most recent transactions loaded first. Best Buy $189.99 posted 6 weeks ago. GameStop $64.99 posted the same day. Foot Locker $147 posted 3 days later. Amazon $34.87, a stuffed animal from a brand I recognized immediately because I had seen it on my niece's wish list. I kept scrolling. There were more. Over the past 6 weeks, the total came to just under $2,900. Every single charge mapped directly onto what I had watched her children unwrap at that table. The AirPods, the Switch game, the Nikes, the stuffed animal. Not one of those was a car repair, not one was a medical bill, not one was urgent by any definition of the word. She had looked me in the eye and said, "I would never." And then she had charged her children's Memorial Day gifts to my card, without asking, without mentioning it, without a single text that said, "Hey, I needed to use it, here's why." I set the phone face down on the counter, sat there. The pizza came. Jasper ate 2 slices and kept reading and fell asleep on the couch with the book still open on his chest. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, and came back to the kitchen. I picked up the phone. I opened the card app, found the option to freeze the account. My thumb sat over the button for about 3 seconds. I pressed it. Card frozen. No new charges can be processed. Then I called the bank's customer line. I explained the situation without emotion. Unauthorized use outside the agreed scope. Nearly $2,900 in personal shopping charges. No prior notification. No approval. The representative took notes, confirmed the freeze was active, and informed me that since my sister was only an authorized user and not a joint account holder, I had full authority to remove her access entirely. I did that too. She flagged the transaction history for review. After I hung up, I opened my notes app and typed a summary. The date, the amounts, the specific merchants, what the card had been designated for, what it was actually used for. I screenshotted every transaction. I saved everything in a folder I labeled records. Then I went to bed. My doorbell rang at 9:47 that night. I checked the peephole. My sister, still in her cookout clothes, my mother behind her in the cardigan she always wore to family things. I opened the door but did not step aside. My sister didn't wait. The card declined when I stopped for gas on the way home, in front of everyone in line. "I know," I said. "I froze it. Because of today. Because I checked the transactions tonight." A pause. Something shifted in her expression. "I was going to tell you. I have screenshots," I said. My mother pressed forward using her reasonable voice. "She was going to pay you back. That was always the plan. You know how stretched thin they've been." She had nearly $3,000 to spend on her children's Memorial Day gifts, I said. "That is not a definition of stretched thin, and it is not an emergency." My sister's voice went tight. "You were going to give us things anyway. The card just made it easier." I looked at her for a long moment. "You used my credit card to buy the gifts you handed your children, while handing my son a used book with a stranger's name in it. That's not making it easier. That's taking from me twice." She said nothing. My mother tried a different approach. "If you don't unfreeze it tonight, the kids lose their summer camp. Registration is Tuesday. You'd be taking that away from them." "Camp is not an emergency," I said, "and their parents are responsible for their summer programs. I'm not." My brother-in-law's voice came from the bottom of the porch steps. I hadn't seen him there. "Just unlock it and we'll work everything out. We always figure it out." "You don't," I said quietly, "not reliably. And it doesn't matter, because I've already removed her from the account permanently. That's done." My sister's composure slipped into anger. "After everything, after all the years, you're doing this over one gift." "It wasn't the gift," I said. "It was what you said while he opened it. It was my mother laughing. It was the fact that you put nearly $3,000 of gifts on my card and then looked at my son and handed him something from a clearance bin. I let that land. That's not one bad gift. Yep. That's who you are when you think there are no consequences." My mother made one last attempt, and she said it quietly, almost gently, like she genuinely believed it. "You're a single mother. You need this family. Jasper needs this family. Don't burn this down over pride." "The only thing burning," I said, "is the version of me who kept paying for things and pretending it was normal." I looked at both of them. The enrichment fees, the HOA, the coat, the card. It all stops. "You handle your family, I'll handle mine." My sister waited for me to flinch. I didn't. She walked to the car without another word. My mother stood at the threshold for a moment, and I thought she might say something real. She didn't. She shook her head slowly and followed. I closed the door, listened to their car pull away. Checked on Jasper, sound asleep, one arm resting over the book. I went to bed. 3 weeks went by without a word from any of them. No texts, no calls. The group chat sat with 23 unread messages until I muted it. The quiet was strange for the first few days. Then it wasn't. It was just quiet. I heard things secondhand, through a cousin who stayed neutral but couldn't help mentioning what she was seeing. My sister's oldest two were pulled from the enrichment center. At the end of June, the program I had been paying $180 a month for, my niece's gymnastics class, ended when the monthly fee didn't get covered. The summer camp my mother had tried to use as leverage at my doorstep was canceled the week before it started. The registration deposit was non-refundable. My brother-in-law picked up extra contract work on weekends. My sister started listing things on Facebook Marketplace: kids' outgrown clothes, a set of patio furniture, a bread maker still in the box. I didn't feel triumphant about any of it. I just noticed it, the way you notice weather. In early July, an email appeared from my mother, subject line blank, 4 paragraphs, single-spaced. She wrote that I was dismantling the family over a misunderstanding, that my sister had fully intended to mention the card and simply hadn't gotten around to it, that the gift for Jasper had been last minute, that things were hectic, that no harm had been intended, that I was choosing pride over blood, that Jasper was growing up without his cousins, without his grandmother, without the family he was owed, and that I alone was responsible for that loss. That people were talking, that the family was asking questions, that she was ashamed of the person I had become, and that she had raised me better than this. I read it twice slowly. I didn't reply. I saved it in a folder on my laptop, screenshotted the timestamp, and then blocked her email address. Then my sister's. Then the shared family account they used for group messages. After that, I went and stood in Jasper's doorway and watched him build something out of Lego on his bedroom floor, completely absorbed, narrating quietly to himself, the way he did when he thought no one was listening. I stood there for a long time. The used book was already on his shelf, standing between 2 others he'd collected. He'd finished it within 2 days of the cookout, pronounced it actually pretty solid, and asked me to find the rest of the series. We'd ordered the next one online. He was already halfway through. Memorial Day came around again the following spring. I woke up early. Jasper was still asleep. I went to the kitchen and made his favorite breakfast: buttermilk pancakes with blueberries folded in, the kind that take longer but are worth it. I brewed coffee. I cut up strawberries, put them in a bowl with a little fresh mint from the pot on the windowsill. I set the small table by the window with the flowers and placed a mason jar of wild landsfizz I'd picked up at the farmer's market in the center of it. He came downstairs in his pajamas, hair going in 4 directions, and stopped at the bottom step when he saw the table. "Is it somebody's birthday?" he asked. "Nope," I said, "just Monday." He climbed into his chair and looked at everything. "This is kind of fancy for just Monday." "You're kind of worth it for just Monday," I said. He thought about that with the particular seriousness he brought to compliments. Then he poured syrup on his pancakes and said, "Fair enough." We ate slowly. He told me about the dream he'd had, something involving a submarine and a very opinionated penguin. I laughed at the right parts and asked follow-up questions and refilled his orange juice when it ran low. After breakfast, I handed him a box wrapped in the Sunday comics section, which he appreciated aesthetically before he even opened it. He tore into it carefully, the way he always did, taking his time, not ripping recklessly. Inside was the backpack he'd seen online months ago and mentioned wonderstood without being told that I was watching the budget, because he understood was watching the budget. It was the right color. It had the right number of pockets. He turned it over in his hands twice. "How did you know?" he asked. "I pay attention," I said. He hugged the backpack first. Then he hugged me. The order of those two things made me laugh out loud. We spent the afternoon outside. We walked to the park 2 blocks over and threw a frisbee badly for a while, then sat in the grass with the sandwiches I'd packed. On the way home, he spotted a lemonade stand run by 2 little kids on the corner and insisted we stop, even though we had lemonade at home, because he said, "You have to support the business, Mom. That's just how it works." That evening, after dinner, he was sitting on the back steps in the early dark with the 3rd book in his series. We'd eventually collected all of them, propped open on his knees. He looked up at me when I came outside. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah," I said. "Do you miss them, like Grandma and everyone?" I sat down beside him and thought about it the way the question deserved, honestly, without reflexive reassurance. "Sometimes I miss who I thought they were," I said, "but that's different from missing who they actually are." He considered that like missing a version of something that didn't really exist. Exactly like that. He went back to his book. A minute passed. "I don't miss the cookouts," he said, not looking up. "I always felt weird at those, like I was doing something wrong just by being there." I looked at him. "Yeah? I don't feel like that with you." I put my arm around him. He leaned into it slightly without breaking his reading, which was the highest compliment he knew how to give. "This was a good day," he said. "Yeah," I said, "it really was." We sat there in the quiet of our small backyard, while the sky darkened and the neighbor's porch light clicked on down the block. The used book was upstairs on his shelf, the full series now beside it. What had been tossed at my son as a small, deliberate diminishment had become something he cared about, a running joke about whoever Sarah was, a series he recommended to his friends, proof that sometimes the thing meant to make you feel small ends up meaning more than anything that arrived sealed in a box. I used to believe that absorbing disrespect quietly was the same as keeping the peace. I spent years acting as though the willingness to say nothing, to keep showing up, to keep paying and helping and pretending it was all fine. I thought that was love. It wasn't. It was just quiet. And there is a real difference between the two. The people who actually love you do not require you to make yourself smaller so they can feel comfortable. They do not laugh at your child and call it nothing. They do not reach into your generosity with both hands and tell you that you owe them more. What I owe my son is everything I have. What I owed them was exactly nothing beyond what I had already freely given. I finally got that order right. Jasper turned a page and exhaled quietly. The sound a person makes when a story is going exactly where they hoped it would. I know the feeling.